The courtroom went silent when they brought in the defendant. Not because of who he was, because of how old he was. 14 years old, handcuffs too big for his wrists, eyes that had seen too much, a boy who should have been worrying about homework and video games. Instead, he was facing a murder charge. His name was Daniel Morrison, and 3 days ago, in front of 6 police officers, he picked up his father's gun and pulled the trigger. One shot, center mass. His father dropped dead before the ambulance even arrived. The police knew why he did it. The prosecutors knew. The whole country knew, because 72 hours before Daniel killed his father had put a bullet through his mother's head, right in front of him, right in front of his 2 younger sisters. Now Daniel sat in juvenile court in Melbourne, Australia, facing life in prison for killing the man who destroyed his family. And the question nobody could answer was simple. Is it murder when you kill your mother's murderer? This is the true story of the Morrison family tragedy. A story about a marriage that ended in gunfire. About 3 children who watched their mother die. About a 14-year-old boy who made an impossible choice. And about a justice system that had to decide whether to punish a child for avenging his mother. But before we get to that courtroom, before we get to Daniel's impossible decision, we need to go back to the night everything ended, to the argument that turned into murder. Let me tell you what really happened. From the outside, the Morrisons looked perfect. James Morrison, 38, successful real estate agent, good-looking, charming, the kind of man who could sell you a house you didn't need and make you thank him for it. Rebecca Morrison, 36, elementary school teacher, beautiful, patient, the kind of woman who remembered every student's birthday and stayed late to help kids who were struggling. 3 kids, Daniel, 14, Emma, 11, Sophie, 8. A 4-bedroom house in the suburbs of Melbourne, 2 cars in the driveway, family photos on the mantle showing smiling faces at the beach, at Christmas, at birthday parties. Perfect. That's what the neighbors would say later. They seemed so perfect. But perfect families don't end with police tape and body bags. The truth is, the Morrison family had been breaking for years, slowly, quietly, in ways that don't show up in Christmas photos. James had a temper, not the kind that explodes in public, the kind that simmers, that waits until doors are closed and neighbors can't hear. Rebecca had tried to leave twice, once 3 years ago, once last year. Both times, James convinced her to stay, promised to change, went to 2 therapy sessions, and declared himself fixed. Daniel saw everything. 14 years old enough to understand, old enough to hate his father for what he did to his mother, old enough to lie awake at night listening to arguments through bedroom walls, old enough to know that one day something terrible was going to happen. He just didn't know he'd be the one to make it worse. It started over something stupid. It always does. Rebecca had taken the kids to her mother's house for the weekend. When she came back Sunday evening, James was drunk. Not tipsy, drunk. The kind of drunk where words slur and balance fails. He accused her of cheating. Said she'd been with another man, had no evidence, didn't need evidence. The alcohol provided all the certainty he needed. Rebecca denied it. Calmly at first, then desperately, then angrily. I was at my mother's house, James, with the kids. With my mother. You're lying. I'm not lying. You're drunk. Again, that word. Again. It lit something in James. Some dark fire that alcohol had been feeding all afternoon. Don't you dare judge me, he said, his voice low. Dangerous. Don't you dare. The kids were in the living room, Daniel on the couch with his phone, Emma and Sophie playing on the floor. They heard their father's voice change. Heard that tone that meant run to your room and lock the door? But before they could move, James grabbed Rebecca's arm. Dad, stop! Daniel stood up, trying to sound brave, sounding terrified instead. Go to your room, James said, not looking at him, eyes locked on Rebecca. Let go of Mom. I said, go to your room. Rebecca pulled her arm free. James, you're scaring the kids. Sleep it off. We'll talk in the morning. She turned to walk away. That's when James went to the bedroom. That's when he came back with the gun. Rebecca saw the gun and her face went white. James, put that down. Please. The kids froze. Emma started crying. Sophie grabbed her sister's hand. Daniel stood between his father and the hallway, between his drunk father with a gun and his terrified mother. "Dad? Please, please don't." James looked at his son. For just a second, something human flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe shame, maybe love. Then the alcohol took over again. "Move, Daniel." "No, I said move." Rebecca's voice cut through. "Daniel, honey, go to your room. Take your sisters. Now." "Mom, now." Daniel grabbed Emma and Sophie, pulled them toward the hallway, toward their rooms, toward safety. But he stopped at the corner, couldn't help himself, looked back, saw his mother standing in the living room, hands raised slightly like she was calming a wild animal. "James, you don't want to do this. You love me, you love the kids. Put the gun down and we'll get help. Real help this time." James was crying now, gun shaking in his hands. "You were going to leave me. You were going to take my kids and leave me." "I wasn't. Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying. James, please." The gun fired. One shot. So loud in the small living room that Emma screamed and Sophie covered her ears and Daniel felt his whole body go numb. Rebecca Morrison dropped to the floor, instantly, like someone had cut her strings. Blood, so much blood, spreading across the carpet, dark red, almost black. James stood there, gun still raised, staring at what he'd done. His wife, the mother of his children, dead on the living room floor. Then he looked up and saw Daniel. Saw his son staring at him with an expression James would never forget. Not horror, not fear, pure hatred. "What did you do?" Daniel's voice was a whisper. "What did you do?" James dropped the gun, fell to his knees, started screaming, "No, no, no, Rebecca, I'm sorry, please." But Rebecca didn't answer, would never answer again. Emma and Sophie were sobbing in the hallway, holding each other, too young to understand but old enough to know their mother wasn't getting up. Daniel walked into the living room, walked past his father, knelt beside his mother, put his hands on her face. Mom, wake up. Please wake up." She didn't wake up. She was already gone. James Morrison did something unexpected. He called the police, told them what he'd done, told them to come arrest him, told them his wife was dead and it was his fault. Then he sat on the couch, gun on the floor beside him, covered in his wife's blood, and waited. Daniel pulled his sisters away from the living room, took them to Emma's bedroom, locked the door, sat with them while they cried. "Is Mom dead?" Sophie asked, 8 years old, asking a question no child should ask. Daniel couldn't answer, couldn't lie to her, couldn't tell her the truth. Emma answered for him. "Yes, Dad killed her." They sat in that bedroom for 20 minutes before the police arrived. Sirens, red and blue lights flashing through windows, heavy footsteps, authoritative voices. "James Morrison, sir, I need you to put your hands on your head." Daniel heard his father sobbing, heard him confessing, "I killed her. I killed my wife. Oh God, I killed her. Sir, hands on your head. Now." They arrested James right there in the living room, read him his rights while he cried and confessed and begged them to bring Rebecca back. Paramedics confirmed what everyone already knew. Rebecca Morrison was dead. Gunshot wound to the head. Died instantly. Child Protective Services arrived. A kind woman with a clipboard who tried to explain what would happen now. Foster care, temporary placement, until family could be contacted. Daniel barely heard her. He was watching through the window as police loaded his father into the back of a patrol car, watching the man who'd killed his mother, who'd destroyed their family, who'd taken everything. And Daniel made a decision. Not consciously, not with thought or planning, something deeper than thought, something primal. His father was going to pay. The next 3 days were a blur. Rebecca's mother, the kid's grandmother, flew in from Sydney, took custody of the children, held them while they cried, planned a funeral she never imagined she'd have to plan. James Morrison was held in custody, charged with first-degree murder. His lawyer tried to argue temporary insanity, crime of passion, anything to reduce the charge. But James confessed multiple times to multiple officers on recording. There was no defense, just mitigation. The media picked up the story, Real estate agent murders, wife in front of children, suburban tragedy, mother of 3 shot dead. Daniel read every article, watched every news segment, absorbed every detail. His father was going to trial, would probably get life in prison. 25 years minimum, not enough, not nearly enough. Daniel's grandmother noticed the change in him, the way he'd gone quiet, the way he stared at nothing, the way his hands clenched into fists whenever someone mentioned his father. "Danny, honey, you need to talk to someone, a therapist, a counselor, someone." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. None of you are fine." I said I'm fine. He wasn't fine. He was planning. Day 3 after the murder, James Morrison was being transferred from the police station to the courthouse for his arraignment. Standard procedure: handcuffs, police escort, press waiting outside with cameras. Daniel's grandmother had brought the kids to give statements to child services required for the case. The children needed to be interviewed. Daniel knew the schedule, knew his father would be there, knew exactly when and where. What he didn't know was how he'd get access to a gun. But his father had taught him one thing: guns were easy to find if you knew where to look. The police evidence locker, where they'd stored the murder weapon, the gun that killed his mother. Daniel was 14, small for his age, looked innocent, looked traumatized, which he was. Security was focused on the press, on the protesters, on James Morrison being led through the building in handcuffs. Nobody was watching the traumatized kid standing near the evidence desk. Nobody saw him slip into the unlocked room during the chaos of the transfer. Nobody saw him find the bag marked Morrison, evidence, firearm. Nobody saw him take his father's gun. James Morrison was being led through the courthouse hallway. 6 police officers surrounding him, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. "Mr. Morrison, do you regret killing your wife? Are you pleading guilty? What do you want to say to your children?" James kept his head down. Didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Then he heard a voice cut through the chaos. "Dad?" He looked up. Daniel stood 15 feet away. Small, thin, looking so much like Rebecca it made James's heart break all over again. "Danny," James started. Then he saw the gun. Everything slowed down. James saw the gun rising, saw his son's hand, steady, not shaking, saw his son's face calm, decided. "Danny, no." The police officer saw it too, started moving, started shouting, "Gun! Gun!" But they were too far away, too surprised, too late. Daniel Morrison, 14 years old, looked his father in the eyes and said 4 words. "This is for Mom." Then he fired. 1 shot, just like his father had fired. Center mass, right through the heart. James Morrison dropped, blood spreading across the courthouse floor, just like Rebecca's blood had spread across their living room carpet 3 days earlier. The police tackled Daniel, ripped the gun from his hands, pinned him to the ground. Daniel didn't resist, didn't fight, just lay there with his face against the cold courthouse tile. "He killed my mom," Daniel said, voice muffled, calm. "He killed my mom and I killed him." James Morrison died before the ambulance arrived, bled out on the courthouse floor while cameras recorded everything. And Daniel Morrison became the youngest person in Australian history to be charged with premeditated murder. The question that consumed Australia for months was simple. What do you do with a 14-year-old who killed his father for murdering his mother? Legally, it was clear. Murder, premeditated. Daniel had stolen the gun, had waited for his father, had fired with intent, but morally, ethically, humanly, the public was divided. Half the country called Daniel a hero, said he'd done what the justice system was too slow to do, said his father deserved it, said the boy should be freed. The other half called him a murderer, said revenge isn't justice, said he'd thrown his life away, said he needed to be punished. Daniel's lawyer, a public defender named Sarah Chen, argued for leniency, temporary insanity, extreme emotional disturbance, a traumatized child who'd watched his mother die and snapped. The prosecution argued for the law, said murder is murder regardless of age, said Daniel had planned this, said society can't function if we let people take justice into their own hands. Daniel himself barely spoke, sat in juvenile court in clothes too big for him, answered questions in monosyllables, showed no emotion. When asked if he regretted killing his father, he said no. When asked if he understood he might spend his life in prison, he said yes. When asked what he'd say to his sisters, he finally showed emotion, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry I left you, but I'm not sorry for what I did." The trial lasted 6 weeks. Witnesses testified about Rebecca's murder, about James's history of abuse, about the night Daniel watched his mother die. Psychologists testified about trauma, about PTSD, about what happens to a child's brain when they experience that level of violence. Legal experts debated juvenile law, debated punishment versus rehabilitation, debated whether a 14-year-old can truly form intent. And through it all, Daniel sat silently, a boy forced to become something he never should have had to be. The judge, an older woman named Margaret Harrison, who'd seen 30 years of cases, but never anything like this, took 2 weeks to deliberate. When she returned, the courtroom was packed. Media, legal observers, Rebecca's family, James's family, everyone waiting? "Daniel Morrison," Judge Harrison said, "please stand." Daniel stood, tiny in his oversized suit, facing the rest of his life. "This court has struggled with your case more than any I've encountered. You committed murder, that is fact. But the circumstances are unlike anything in legal precedent. You are a child, a traumatized child. A child who watched his father murder his mother and responded with violence, learned from that very father." She paused. The courtroom held its breath. "This court finds you guilty of voluntary manslaughter, not murder. Your intent was clear, but your capacity was diminished by extreme emotional disturbance." Daniel showed no reaction. "However," Judge Harrison continued, "this court also recognizes that punishment alone serves no one. You are 14 years old. You have 2 sisters who need you. You have a life ahead of you. Therefore, this court sentences you to 8 years in juvenile detention with mandatory psychological treatment, with the possibility of early release after 5 years if you demonstrate rehabilitation." The courtroom erupted, some cheering, some angry, some crying. Daniel just stood there. 8 years. He'd be 22 when he got out. Emma would be 19. Sophie would be 16. He'd miss their childhoods, miss watching them grow up, miss being the big brother they needed, but he'd be alive, and his father wouldn't. Sometimes, Daniel thought, that's what justice looks like. Daniel Morrison was released from juvenile detention at age 19. He'd completed every therapy program, earned his high school diploma, showed, as his counselors said, remarkable rehabilitation and insight. Emma and Sophie were there when he walked out. No longer little girls, teenagers now, taller, older, changed by everything that had happened.
They hugged him, all 3 of them crying. 3 siblings who'd lost both parents to violence, who'd been torn apart by murder and revenge, who'd somehow survived. "I'm sorry," Daniel said, "for the 100th time, for the 1000th time." "We know," Emma said. "We forgive you." "I don't forgive myself." "We know that too." They drove to the cemetery, to Rebecca Morrison's grave, visited her together for the first time in 5 years. Daniel knelt at his mother's headstone, put flowers down, whispered words only she could hear. "I hope I did the right thing, Mom. I hope you'd understand. I hope you're proud of me." The stone didn't answer, but the wind blew, and for just a moment, Daniel felt something like peace. He'd killed his father. That would never change. That would follow him forever. But he'd also protected his mother's memory, made sure her killer didn't get to live free, made sure there was some kind of justice, even if it wasn't the legal kind. Was it right? Was it wrong? Daniel didn't know. Maybe he'd never know, but he'd made his choice, and he'd live with it for the rest of his life. This is a story about impossible choices, about a child forced to become a killer, about justice versus revenge, about what happens when the law moves too slowly for a broken heart. Medio, Daniel Morrison took a life, but the life he took had already destroyed everything Daniel loved. Was he a murderer? Legally, yes. Was he wrong? That's for you to decide. What would you have done in his position? If you'd watched your father kill your mother, would you have let the law handle it? Or would you have done what Daniel did? Drop your answer in the comments. No judgment, just honesty. And if this story moved you, if it made you think, made you feel, made you question what justice really means, hit that subscribe button. Because stories like this, stories that challenge us, are what Tell Sunak is all about.